Real quick, before we jump into the show, we created the Collecting Keys podcast to be a real estate investing podcast that is created by real estate operators for real estate operators. And we want operators everywhere to know what it really takes these days to be successful in this business, rather than all the fluff that all the other content creators and podcasters out there make. And so one of the challenges with this is that it's challenging to grow because most operators are too busy out there working, right? And they aren't always learning or actively seeking new learning material. And so if you could please share this show with any fellow operators you can text it to them, you can post it on your socials, you can leave us a good review that you then share somewhere. That would be amazing. But really, whatever, it really helps us continue to get excited to create content. And it will also help you because everyone that you expose us to will get better as a real estate operator and close more deals. So if you could do that for us, it would really mean a ton. And otherwise, we appreciate you guys. And let's get into this episode.
All risk is it's either a lack of knowledge or a lack of control. What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. This is your first time here. This is the real estate show by operators for operators, so you can continue to grow your real estate business and make a ton of money through all of the ups and downs of the economy, real estate market, and just like people, because I feel like that's kind of the big thing that people don't talk about is like the culture index and like the fact that we live in this weird country right now that's a capitalistic country that's mostly uncapitalist. It's like it's a change.
The black swan is the culture that you can't control.
Dude, totally, right? And I feel like that isn't talked about.
It feels like waves, right? Like you can almost feel it. You know what's funny? Like I was actually thinking about this because my social media algorithm is mostly like funny shit. Like I'm not like trying to go hard.
You can share as detailed as you want to. I know exactly what your algorithm is.
It's not anything educated or important to the world, but I swear they have an ability to turn the faucet on, and maybe it's just the pressure from the people that just pushes it over and bleeds over into my shit, or maybe the social media people are turning it on. But I get an exact dichotomy, almost like reel for reel or whatever, of like anything that's happening that's maybe hit the news or whatever from both perspectives. It's interesting how it's kind of balanced, but in educated ways on either way, because that's what catches people's like eyes. Like the tariffs are going in place right now, and like here's how it's going to kill everybody in America and the country's over. And then the opposite side is like, hell yeah. And then it's just funny memes about Canada and how dumb they are. And you know what I mean? Like, but it's like this social pressure on both sides getting pushed over and bleeding into my algorithm of usually funny things.
I mean, that's good. Yours is a lot more balanced than mine. Mine tends to get weird up.
It's weird, right? But I do, and I get both, because like I could see it getting pushed one way or the other, but it's actually both. But it just feels like when you talk about like the culture of, it's like these big bow waves of that does make people make decisions.
It's true.
Honestly.
Totally. Yeah.
From financial decisions, buying decisions, business, long-term, jobs, careers, locations, there's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's major influence that comes from that these days. Anyways, if this is your first time here, guys, my name's Mike DeHaan, and this is my co-host, Dan Austin. Usually we have a third host, Mr. Dylan Cook, but I don't know where Dilly Bear is today, because he no-showed for the podcast.
I hope he's okay.
I hope he's okay too. So if you guys can hit him up at Dylan_does_deals and tell him, say, hey, Dill Pill, we hope you're doing okay, little man. Say it just like that. And if
he'll
he gets
love you guys for that.
If he gets like 15 DMs that are that exactly, I would be so happy.
Ask him for Bitcoin advice too while you're at it.
Yeah, don't do that because he gets on his high horse and it's disgusting. But anyways, and if you're wondering why Mike sounds a little crappy today, I just got back from a Gobundance event and picked up a nice cold while I was there.
Yeah.
But
that happens.
Yeah, as it does. Yeah, so I want to talk about that event though a little bit, because there's just some good overall takeaways from like business and real estate and stuff that happened there. But so if you're unfamiliar with Gobundance, it's like a millionaire mastermind, they call it. And it's like they have a women's version of it now, but it's a men's group, all like higher net worth, most people entrepreneurs, a lot of real estate guys. And it's a group that Dan and I have been part of for coming up on 4 years almost.
It's been a while. We're like OGs all of a sudden.
Dude, it's crazy actually. So it's funny, at the event, they went over like Gobundance's KPIs, and the average churn is like just over 2 years.
Wow.
So basically people leave after every 2.25 years. So technically we are going to be veterans at this point because we have now lasted longer than the average person. And people typically churn out because, it is expensive to be a part of. I think now for new members, it's $15,000 a year. And if you don't engage in the community, it's just like every other community, right? You don't get value out of it. But for people that are heavily engaged, which I would say we fall into, there's an incredible amount of knowledge and life experience and just like wisdom that exists amongst all the guys that are in there. And so they just had their first event for the year as their winter mastermind in Snowbird, Utah. And I was down there for 4 days connecting with guys. And there was some really, really good takeaways from it overall. And just what's always very refreshing to me when I go to things like that is I feel like kind of you're talking about with your media stuff before, Dan, it's easy to fall into these traps around having these perceptions around the economy, around how things are going, what the potentials are for things to go up, down, whatever. When you're in a room full of entrepreneurs, none of that really matters because everyone's very adaptable. Right. And that was actually one of the opening focuses. I always try to have like a theme. And so the theme for this one, they said, was pattern recognition and learning to recognize patterns that will lead to outcomes. And that's patterns, both macro. So like seeing things that are happening, politics, the world, economy, hiring, staff members, whatever, but also on a micro and internal level too, right? Like at what points do you personally find you become less productive? Or like what patterns do you recognize in your own like workflow or your own life that leads you to be happy or leads you to be successful or, leads you to avoid doing something at all costs. And it was a very sort of introspective way to, reflective way to view things, which was pretty interesting. And they went through a ton of different stuff into that around like how it relates to teams, how you can use it to better manage people. And what was fascinating too, is I talked to more and more people. I talked to dozens of people I had met before over the course of that week. And I think every single person interpreted it completely differently, which was pretty wild.
Oh, that is funny how people pick up on those, especially those soft skill things of how people hear them and read them and how they put them into action, because it could be so different than what you would have expected.
Totally. Yeah. But, so it was like some good, like little direct quotes that came from it. So one of my favorite ones is from David Osborne, but he did a talk kind of on his little legacy, which he's done a bunch of times, but he didn't touch on it too much because, as he said, he's sick of telling the same story over and over again. But he was talking around hiring and how to find people that are going to fit into an organization where you're looking for A players. And this is something that we talk about a lot in Scale. It's something that we've talked about a lot ourselves, talked about a lot of young entrepreneurs, is they want to like build a team, but they don't know how to find good people. And they said, going towards the pattern recognition piece, what do good people typically, what are they driven by, right? Their own visions, their own goals. They're not driven by a paycheck. And I feel like when you're a new entrepreneur, you feel like the paycheck, flexibility to schedule, the insurance, retirement, those are the things that matter. When for A performers, those don't matter at all.
Right.
But in order to find A performers, the quote was, you have to have a vision that is big enough and a dream that is big enough that their dream fits inside of yours.
Yep.
Right. I thought that was a really interesting way to view it. And that's why if you're a small thinker, you have a business that you only want to make $200,000 a year, you're never going to find that A player that wants to come in and work for your business because they probably want to make more money than you do.
Yeah, exactly. That's a reasonable expectation for somebody that's going to be a rock star.
Yeah.
I think David said at a different event I was at on a similar conversation, but like within that same kind of context, he wants his top 5 employees to be making $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that sets out, I don't know what David's net worth is right now.
It's about 170 million, he said.
Which is down, right?
Yeah. It was like 250. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like he's obviously built something pretty decent size in the context of like most people's average like ability to build business. And so for him to say that, that means like, okay, my top 5 people that are close to me that are advising me need to be making $1 million a year. There's CEOs that don't make $1 million a year at large companies.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like you think about it, he's trying to basically put 5 rockstar CEOs around him to run his business, however his, home or family office or however he breaks that structure down, however that is, like that's how he's operating. And so to your point, if you're happy with making $250 a year and that's your vision, to equate that, then maybe you should have like 3 Filipinos working for you, because like the wage, like what you could pay somebody, you couldn't pay somebody in America to have their own personal vision underneath you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, that's one of the reasons it doesn't hurt to dream bigger, because you're going to attract better talent, right? You know, people are drawn to larger vision, especially A-level people. But if you just want button pushers, like you said, Dan, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you need to have realistic expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You can't have expectations that they are going to perform like $1 million employee if your vision is for them to be a $10,000 a year employee.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that looking back at the acquisition.com little meetups that I went to last year, it was a very similar sort of vibe, right? Where Alex Hermosi, right, obviously has this huge vision for what he wants to do with acquisition.com, and that's fully reflected in his team. You know, like several members of his team, they're already self-made, you know, multi-millionaires, right? Like I talked to like his head of marketing at the first one I went to. The dude sold like a drop shipping e-commerce company for like 8 figures during COVID. Wow. And he still works for Alex. Why? Yeah. He doesn't need to do anything. Right. But he's like wants to be a part of the bigger thing.
He's attracted to the vision.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. And you can have that as a small business, right? Basically, it's like the same thing as when you have a couple dudes in a bar and they're like, you know, yeah, let's like start this business together. Let's like do this thing. And they like have this big plan of action. But then you actually go out and fucking do it.
Yeah.
You know, but you just got to keep that same level of excitement and intensity and stuff going, and not just have end in talk. But, you know, and I also think too, one of the things talked about is you have to project that and tell people about it. Because if people don't have a way to comprehend that or see that or understand it, then it's never going to be picked up by those A players, right? So I actually just did a scale call on this today. Figure on hiring and firing, we talked about this concept. And when you're like a one-man operator in a small market, that is hard to do, especially if you don't have social media, especially if you're not going to your real estate meetups, you're too busy, especially if you're not connecting with other investors. Like you'll never be able to project your visions, you know, and you can go and you can post a job listing and say like, our goal is to be the #1 real estate company in, you know, whatever. But if they can't actually go and see you pursuing that, they're not going to, no one's going to have interest in working for you.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? I regularly tell people ask what the benefits we've seen from having this show. And the #1 benefit that I've seen more than anything else has been how easy it is to hire people.
Yeah, that's definitely helped us. You're right.
It's crazy. Like looking at some of the job listings that we've had over the years, where I've literally given the exact listing and posting cross and everything to other people and scale members, and they'll be like, yeah, I got 2 applicants. I'll be like, I don't tell you, bro, I got 70.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the nice thing too is if they are a listener or they become a listener after like posting a job, they know our opinions, they know our thoughts, they know our vision, they understand the history of where we've come from, because it's all out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people get attracted to that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a really, really good one. And then I actually really like this quote too. So Dan, how often do you hear people talk about how they need accountability and how like that's something that they really strive for, and they just want a group or a person to help keep them accountable because they can't do it themselves, but yet they still continue to fail over and over and over again?
Too often.
I feel like it's like...
Is that a number? It's a lot.
No, it's not a number. But basically they kind of like shit on that whole notion
of accountability.
And they said that most people fail at accountability because they're not transparent. Mm-hmm. Right? And you have to be transparent with yourself and other people. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the general quote, is that accountability only works if you have transparency and you're unrelenting with that. And it's such a funny thing where you have people, and you see it in every industry, that are like hiring coaches, you know, bringing on business partners, trying to work with their spouse, that are like trying to be being held accountable to something, but then they lie about it.
That's wild.
Both to themselves and, you know, to whoever they're working with. Like one of the big things that I used to think about with this was when I was working at the gym and I had some people that I would do like nutrition coaching with, and like we would have people's macros and stuff all weighed out.
I've seen some Instagram reels on this. I love this shit. These are the kind of Instagram reels I get.
Dude, like all the time. Like I'd be like, are you following this? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I know that you're not, because
you're like, the math, it's math, it's science.
The math just isn't mathing, bro. And they're like, well, I did go out on Saturday. I'm like, well, why did you take 5 questions for me to get to that? Just start with that.
I had 12 chili dogs at 7-Eleven, and then I got drunk as shit on Saturday night.
Yeah, dude. Like always.
Yeah.
No, but you see the same thing in business. And I think the funny thing is in business, just like you see in the gym where people, they do that and they still show up every day and work out. in business, you still have people that are showing up and working 10 and 12-hour days, but they're not doing anything.
That's the easy part of it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
that's the leading indicator. I work 12 hours, or I go to the gym 6 days a week. That's like the easy one. There's the hard one, which is the counting your macros and showing up for yourself every single day when you're choosing what to put into your pie hole, right? Same thing with work. One around like work and growing business is so challenging because sometimes you may not know like what you need to be working on until after you look back and you're like, shit, I wasted my time on that. So that it can get challenging. But I 100% like can align with the accountability thing. And I would add like one layer that I have found over the years is it's not just that people lie to themselves. So they don't actually know what they want before they set accountability. So then when they're being held accountable, then they decide to lie or they don't do the right things or they get lost in it. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, it's another year. Let's start new goals. So you have to really understand that. One thing that I found with my Gobundance Go Pod from an accountability standpoint is the intentionality we kind of set around like, hey, like we're all here to help each other grow. We just need to know what that truly looks like. And we're going to ask the right questions down the line as you start unfolding those goals and those aspirations. And then just celebrate the wins with you and help you through the losses. But you got to share what it is that you want to do, that transparency. And then from there, you can do a lot. It can be nice to have that accountability. If you don't use, those are the guys that you see churn really fast and Gobundance because they're like, well, I don't want to fail. You know what I mean? Subconsciously, they set these goals that are completely arbitrary and then they don't do any of them. And then when it's time to be held accountable, they just are like, I can't make that call today, guys.
That's also why I'm not a big goals guy, because I feel like if you call something a goal, you're giving yourself permission to fail, right? Or what you're doing is people will subconsciously set goals that are so achievable that they limit their ceiling.
Yeah.
Right? Because they will go at the exact pace. I don't remember the name of the, there's like an effect where basically you will take the exact amount of time that you were given to do something.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective because I don't 100% disagree with you. I think that you have to have some like guide on for you to follow, but it may be better served as like a feeling. What does it feel like when you're there? Or what does it feel like as you get there? Because, a lot of people say, oh, once I get to this level of wealth, for example, then I'll have made it. But then they always notoriously get there and they're like, dude, I was still miserable. It didn't change anything. It's like, well, what feeling were you chasing? What emotion? What did that need? You need to know what that feels like, I think. Otherwise, the goal is meaningless. Whether that's like getting super fit. Oh, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. Like, okay, what is that going to feel like? And if you can't describe that, then maybe it's a completely misplaced goal because you're chasing the wrong thing.
Totally. And spoiler alert for financial goals, I think the vast majority of people will reiterate this to you, is that whatever you think is going to feel like when you hit that financial goal, it'll be cool for maybe like 10 minutes and then you're going to feel exactly the same.
Right.
That's why people say money doesn't buy happiness, which I don't fully agree with. But also if you're a miserable prick, but you have a lot of money, you're still going to be a miserable prick.
Right. Money buys freedom and freedom can be happy.
Exactly.
It can make you feel happy, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of other quotes you can throw in there what money does. It does buy you some cool shit. And it does give you that freedom to have time and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, you and I heard a lot of people on the extreme ends of the wealth as far as being wealthy and them saying, yeah, the money did not make me happier. But then again, the money can do things. One of the things money can do is buy time. And it's not necessarily like buy more time on this earth because no matter how rich you are, you can't even buy another millisecond. But it can buy the time that you have left and give it to you as opposed to somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. And then one more just to wrap up this conversation that I really liked. Matt King is a CEO. He shared this. He got this from one of like the ultra rich like legacy families. I can't remember which one it was, but it was one that they were looking at going into an investment on that David knows on like a first name basis. So they were talking to him about it. And Matt's response, well, I guess like comment to them was like, I don't know, this one just like feels very, very risky. And these people's response are that risk does not exist and they don't believe in risk. And all risk is, it's either a lack of knowledge or a lack of control. Right? So it basically the premise being that if you have knowledge around how something's supposed to work, or like what the details are, there's no risk because you'll be able to determine if something's bullshit. Right? Or it's a lack of control in the way that if you are putting your money into a machine that you either have no control over or you have no way of recovering control if things go sideways, then yeah, like you will potentially lose money, right? So if you can determine like what level of those things you're comfortable with, then there's not really like a risk component at all. Basically, it's just an educated decision.
That's interesting because kind of you and I were actually talking about completely separate before we were recording is like buying an off-market house. Like we have experience and knowledge. So for us, we can come in and we're at the level where we can go and say, let's pay cash for this house and let's take the risk, whatever that risk is, which is basically not risky to us, but to us brand new. When we first started investing, it felt super risky. I don't know. The first time I bought a rental property, I was like, oh my God, this is so risky. Now that I know it, I know all the bookends on what can happen, it doesn't feel risky. Now I just make a calculated decision whether the unknowns that might happen are either worth it or not worth it based on the price that I'm getting into that investment at.
Exactly.
So I can kind of relate to that, I guess.
Yeah. And I would say it's not that like risk doesn't exist in the way that you can't lose money, but basically risk it's all calculated, right? And your downside, and you can predict that, or you can make an educated decision. You're no longer like rolling the dice if you have appropriate knowledge, appropriate control.
Right.
And, I think in a real estate standpoint, that's really important to understand, not only for yourself when it comes to buying properties and analyzing the quote unquote risks there. Because like you said, if you are more experienced, you have more knowledge there. Obviously, you do have full control of the asset and the more pieces of the entire process that you are the owner of. Right? Meaning if you're managing it all yourself versus if you're like a private investor, those are all things that give you more control. It's very important in real estate, but I would also say it's very important when you are talking to potential investors, when you're looking to get into other parts of real estate, like lending, like we've recently done quite a lot. It's funny because we have this lending company, SLA Capital, that we've been kind of growing this year. And a big part of it is we've been working with what's called co-lenders, where people can come in and essentially buy fractions of notes that we're lending on. So they only have $10,000. They can come in, they can buy $10,000 worth of a $200,000 loan. They make 12% interest on it. But what that prevents us from having to do is go and like raise a fund, make sure that they're accredited investors, all sort of things, because they're actually coming in as a JV partner on the asset.
Yeah, they're still in first position, right? Where normally if you're going to loan somebody 10 grand, that's usually a second, third, or fourth position.
Exactly.
And so you can come in as first position and then we can now go and get more loans done.
Exactly. And the thing that I love about this model is we can work with more average people since, not everyone's an accredited investor. We have a lot more flexibility on our money. We alleviate what's called cash drag, which is when you have funds that you've raised that you haven't allocated that are basically costing your business money. But the biggest challenge that I've had when talking to people has been they don't have a full understanding of how real estate works, right? Which one of the reasons that the accredited investor sort of designation exists is because there's this old adage, if you figured out how to make money, you must be educated to understand how things work, right? When you're talking to somebody that only has like $100,000, they want to give you 20,000 of that. They haven't necessarily cracked the code to make money yet. And so the big questions that people always have are around like, I don't even understand how real estate's secured, right? Like I understand you have like a loan, but I haven't explained to them what a deed of trust is, what a promissory note is, a personal guarantee.
We should make a cartoon.
We definitely should actually. That would be really good. Like a little...
This is how it works.
Educational, like a little like ebook,
That would be cool.
Because there's a level of knowledge that they don't have. And so when they hear that they could make 11 or 12% interest on it, to them it feels risky because it sounds too good to be true compared to the bank account that they're getting 3% on right now.
Yeah, or the stock market, which is completely unsecured.
Yeah, exactly. So their perceived level of risk is high, when in reality, from our end, it's extremely low because we understand the asset. We're the ones that are completely in control of the process. We're investors in it ourselves. And so it's been an interesting experiment sort of like going through that.
Right.
Because it's like it really shows how much that perceived risk can vary based off of feeling of control and their total understanding.
100%.
So, but yeah, I got a lot of other takeaways too, but we've rambled enough about those. Those are three of my favorite ones that came out. But overall, it was a great event, and if you have that, I think you need $2 million net worth now, and you want to, get around more guys that are crushing it. A lot of younger guys too these days. It's funny. This was one of the first times I met quite a few guys that are younger than me. At only 34 is pretty remarkable.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but check out Gobundance. It's a good group. anyone that's in real estate, I think real estate especially, I think you can get a ton from it.
There's the Emerge crowd too. If you don't meet that criteria, that you can join Gobundance Emerge. And that has notoriously been like one of the best, if not better than the main group of GoBundance, just because they have so much more education and I don't know what I'd call it, just like events and things around getting those guys up to the $2 million mark. And it's just a lot more energy, because for a lot of the people that are in the Emerge group, they're just there where we were several years ago, where we're like, let's go. I will tackle the world to get to where I want to go.
Yeah, totally. Emerge is a good option. Yeah. So yeah, we're not like sponsored by GoBundance. We just it's a group that we really,
we don't get paid at all from them.
I know we should though, honestly.
They should pay us.
But yeah, it's a group we believe in. We've been a part of it for a while. So definitely something to check out if that's for you.
If you can give me about 36 seconds, I just want to share our Scale community with you. So Scale stands for Scaling Cash Flow, Assets, Leverage, and Equity. And it is our exclusive community for real estate operators looking to take this game seriously. In the community, you get to hang out with myself, Dan, Dylan, and other operators around the country who are all working to be the best in their market. We recently did a survey, and every single member said that the community had directly contributed to major growth they experienced in the last 12 months. On top of that, you get all of our processes around marketing, sales, building a CRM, and you even get preferred relationships with Lowe's and different financing/lenders so that you can get your deals 100% paid for without a headache. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, go to collectingkeys.com/scale. Let's see if you're a good fit.
So that was my last week. And then I know you released an episode about a lot of our deals. I don't know if we have any like major updates or anything that we want to talk about. I do have an interesting lesson actually I have two lessons from last week.
Yeah, let's hear them.
So first one, this is a quick one to explain. It's a lesson on follow-up and the importance of continuing to, I would say, market to motivated people and do your long-term follow-up process. So we closed the deal on Friday. How much did we make on Blake Road? 20 grand?
20 grand.
We made $20,000 on that deal. And, we are currently in February of 2025. And that property had been in our system since early of 2022. Jeez. So it was like since April, I think. So almost 3 full years that property had been in, and it had been in for so long. We had talked to 2 different sellers. And the funny thing is when they called us for this transaction, they actually called us as a new lead.
That's wild.
Right?
I did not know that part. I did not know that. Yeah. Did we mail them again? We couldn't.
Yeah.
We wouldn't. Did we? Okay.
We did. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, if stuff has been dead for long enough, we'll re-put them in.
We'll kick it back in. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we mailed them again. They called and we talked to a different seller of the same house, which was now the previous person that we talked to's son. And that reopened it and we ended up getting a contract.
That's wild.
And the funny thing is too, so we got that contract for $500. We sold it for $520. The original asking price in 2022 was $850,000.
Wow. Which isn't honestly too far off of where, especially in 2022, where it should have been. 850 is a lot, maybe 750, but like, yeah, it sounds absurd, but like it actually with the market. And the crazier thing is we probably mailed them as INW properties.
We did
the first time. So we've mailed them as backyard home buyers this time, which is we've rebranded. So that's what's even more fascinating. And I think people forget or people get wrapped around like, what is brand loyalty? And I think brand loyalty doesn't necessarily exist too much from like to stay with the same seller from house to house, but it's like, who's aware of you at that moment when they need to sell the house? It's brand awareness,
Yeah. And that's 90% of the business, right? Is being in front of the right person, right? When they decide to make the decision to sell.
Yeah. It's not Coke versus Pepsi. It's who can I sell to right now? Who do I know? Who seems the most legit? Because we've also had that before. The seller actually, when I talked to him on the phone, as I was going through the disposition process, he was like, you guys legit seemed like the most professional out there and you seemed not sleazy. You seemed really good. And he had heard comments from friends of his like, hey, those cash buyers, they'll do weird stuff at the last minute. You got to be careful. Like, so the word's on the street because there's too many dirtbags out here trying to do dirtbag shit, right? So he kind of knew what he was getting into. He understood it wasn't like he didn't know what a wholesaler was and all that. But like he even said, he's like, yeah, your branding, everything just seemed so much more professional with you guys. That's why I went with you. And that goes back to the brand awareness and what that brand represents. It's not brand loyalty. It's just getting in front of them.
Totally. Yeah. And, this guy was an attorney. He was like a put together person. Like he had options and ultimately they had to get rid of it because of a divorce and some other family stuff. But yeah, so that was a good lesson on follow up and making sure that you are keeping your mailings updated and that you're continuing to reach out to people if they have potential reason to need to sell at a discount.
For sure.
Okay. Second lesson, we had our first situation last week of an attempted wire fraud.
That one was wild, scary.
Which was pretty fascinating, honestly, like how it came together. And I don't know what this says about Dan and I as employers, but the first thing that we both had was that someone in our team fucked up.
Not that they fucked up, but like I see what you're saying. Yeah,
or they given like wrong instructions, or they had like been doing something weird with like the closer.
Yeah.
But so we had this, it was actually a loan for our lending company that was paying off. And he'd been talking to somebody that works for us. And basically she had been getting like weird vibes. Right. And so she called me. She had her number on file. She was like, hey, she's like, I know you. We've done business. I know exactly who you are. So I can verify this is you. He's like, do you know who this person is? And I was like, yeah, he works for me. He's like, okay, well, something's weird. Like, I don't know what it is, what he's trying to do. I'm just getting such weird vibes. I just don't feel comfortable wiring out the money. And so we kind of went through the full conversation. And ultimately what we inferred is that I'm not fully certain of this particular piece yet, but I'm quite positive this is what's happened. The title company had actually been like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Data breach, hacked?
They had been breached, infiltrated, whatever. Someone had gotten into their database, their CRM, something, and had basically seen that our loan was paying off today. They had gone through, they had found the point of contact's email, which was our team member. They had blocked him in like the main account so that he couldn't outreach anymore. And they had created a separate email that was basically SLA Capital with an S on the end. So that way, when they were emailing back and forth, unless you really looked at it, you couldn't see.
You wouldn't notice that.
No way. And they had gone as far as to get checks that were made that had our company on them, like our company name with our mailing address, and then like had like their company name with like a little like hidden in there, kind of in the middle. It was going to like the sketchy online bank. They actually recreated our loan payoff statement with all of their like banking information at the bottom of it.
Yeah, they like copied and pasted, like they had our loan payoff statement.
Oh yeah, totally.
Which is unique to us. It's not like a standard form.
No, they had like all the hard docs and everything. They had like the loan reconveyance. They had everything that you would need to essentially come off as the lender. And the thing that triggered the title agent was the fact that when she would call our guy, it would instantly go to like this voicemail box has not been set up. And then she would leave a voicemail and he would never call back, or like not that she would see. And then he would always email like 5 or 10 minutes later and say, hey, sorry, I missed your call. I tried to call you back and the phone number just keeps not going through. If you could just confirm you got the wire instruction, just send them money, that would be awesome. It's like, sorry, I'm really busy today. Like, I know we need to close this today. And basically was relying on the fact that it was Friday and knew this lady would be trying to get it done, hoping that she would eventually be like, yeah, whatever, it's fine, and just get the money out. But she did her job as the closer and recognized that it was feeling sketchy and refused to do it.
Yeah.
And called, and they ended up just sending us a check because that's how they felt most secure doing it, which is totally fine.
It's wild, dude. And the thing is, so we were just, also for clarity, we were the lender on this. So it was a payoff getting paid to us. Mm-hmm. But now I've kind of like, I called their bank and I was like, okay, how should I do these wire instructions? Is there still not like a really good way to do it? Because even talking to like one of our title agents, like she texted me the wire instructions because she's like, I can send it to your encrypted through our system. It goes out encrypted, but I just take that. I don't have an encrypted mail system. I just take that and I send it to our bank and I say, hey, wire this money out of this account. And then the bank calls me and says, I want to confirm you want to send money. But I mean, like there's still steps in there where it's not like secure. And so if somebody gets hacked into your email or does something, they're just going to be able to see all your shit. And they're going to just be like, cool, I'll just manipulate that a little bit. And just like this person did and steal money. Wire fraud's a real thing. I feel like now I'm happy that I get calls like, hey, I want to confirm these wire instructions. I'm like, shit, bitch, I sent them to you. Like, you know what I mean? That is good. But now I see why.
It was very eye-opening for sure.
Yeah. I thought wire fraud was some weird stuff they like slap on like a white collar guy for doing some other weird crime that had nothing to do with wiring. It's a real thing. People actually steal money with wires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, and they have their process down, right? Dude, they probably have SOPs.
Probably.
How they do. The funny thing is too, is I looked up the company name and this is how crafty they are. So the company name was almost exactly the same as this cybersecurity company.
Interesting.
Right? That they had. So it was a little bit different. That was very intentional, right? Like I guarantee that they went and they made this company name that looked similar to an existing company.
Damn.
that was like cybersecurity so that they could look more legit if somebody did decide to back check that.
Wild.
Right? Or it's a cybersecurity company that was doing that on purpose. They could be like, see, dumbass, you just got your shit hacked. Now you need to hire us.
They're red teaming them or whatever they call
Yeah,
that.
right.
Like, yeah, dude, that's wild. This is why we need Bitcoin. 100%. Which Dylan was here to talk about it.
Oh yeah, Dylan would be able to jerk off all over why Bitcoin remittances doesn't happen. Why we need Bitcoin? It has an undestructible ledger or whatever they say. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So, but anyways, so those are our good lessons. Cool. Anything else to add, Dan, before we wrap this up?
No. Yeah. Good week. Everything went well. So I think that we got our money safe and sound. We closed some deals last week.
Did.
Things are moving. 2025 is hopefully looking good for everybody out there listening too.
It is looking good. We already have 2 scale members who are on, in fact, more than that, 3 scale members who include Dylan, who are on track to do $1 million this year. It's only January.
Which is amazing.
Especially because January is usually like the slow month. Usually you're needing to pick up for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got people really like scratching, knocking at the door of 100K fees in a month, which is pretty freaking.
Yeah, which is pretty wild. I know. And we talked to Mason this morning about that, just really quick to wrap up on our call. And I was like, oh yeah, and then when you're out, you're spending, $10,000, $15,000 in marketing. He's like, bro, I was like, I'm only at 4,000. I just increased to 7. I'm like, you're spending $4,000 in marketing and you already have 86,000 on the books for January.
That's amazing, dude. Like, I know those numbers are unreal.
21x on your ad spend. It's stupid.
That's called hustle, baby.
Yeah, no shit. Awesome, guys. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Please share this with anyone that's in the real estate business or, I don't know, whatever the fuck else we would appeal to. But we'll talk to you guys next week.
See y'all.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you want more from us, you can shoot us a follow on Instagram. I am at Mike_invest. Dan is at InvestorManDan. And Dylan is at Dylan_does_deals. Shoot us a follow and send us a DM to let us know what you think of the show.